Hi, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of Cranked and Ranked, the podcast where me and Mr. Eddie Sparxx rank discographies, sometimes other stuff, sometimes random shit. But today, like we do occasionally, we are ranking our favorite albums from a particular year. And without further ado, God damn it, I said it again. What is wrong with me? Anyway,
drinking game.
I'm Old Head. With me, as always, Eddie Sparxx.
Ho, ho, ho. It is the festive season.
Yeah, that's why I got green light. I don't know if you've noticed that I have lights around my room now, and I've been changing them to fit kind of, if it's a band, I'll try to fit it to the band, or I'm just like, oh, the Christmas season kind of just fully started, so I'll use green today, since this is not an actual band. Yeah, trees, you know? But plus, I think it gives my room like a nicer look. It's just, you know, I kind of dig it. Yeah. But anyway, and yeah, where were we? Yes, we're going to be ranking our top 10 favorite albums from 1994. And as usual, I say top 10 favorites because there's no way to say that these are the best, especially because I'll go ahead and get this out of the way. I had to narrow it down from a possible list of 35 albums that could have made the top 10. 35. Yep. So I had to leave classic albums that I love, albums that most people or other people would put in their top 10 and I'd be like, fuck yeah. But in the end, I had to be really true to myself and be like, well, how do I really feel about these? And how are they affecting me in my life and, you know, my actual enjoyment of them. So, but it was a chore. I thought this was going to be an easy year to do, and it wasn't. I literally went, yeah, there's going to be, maybe I'll have a hard time putting together a top 10. No, the hard time was the opposite way, where I had way too many albums to choose from. But before we get there, we have to talk about something important.
Yes.
Because today is the 4th of December, 2022. Mm-hmm. If you're listening to this in the future, I'm giving you context. And this past Monday? This past Monday.
Yeah. The day after we recorded the last episode.
Okay. A new Metallica song premiered, which at this point is old news to a lot of people. And it's called Lux Eterna. And I had nobody had any clue it was coming out. But I feel like I'm normally like on top of things, but I had to get a message from Eddie.
Yeah, because this is one I beat you to.
You did.
Yeah.
I had no fucking clue. And so, and even at that point, we were so early that when you went to the YouTube video, there was no album link. It was updated later to actually include links to an album. So at first I'm like, this is a song, but what is it for? I don't know.
I'm going to come out and say this right now. I am one of the first 400 people to like that video.
Nice. I don't remember what I was, 1,000 something.
I took note of it because I thought this is an event and who knows what the future holds. But all I know is I can turn around and say, when I revisit that music video, I was there within the first 10 fucking minutes. Hell, first 5 minutes of it being posted.
Yeah.
The song couldn't have even played twice in the span of time that I showed up.
Yeah, and it's a short one. So I was going to mention this before we even started the podcast, but Eddie said, let's just save it for the podcast because we do talk about Metallica a lot. And so before we even get to 1994, when there is no Metallica album, let's just shoehorn in some Metallica talk. So yeah, I asked you, how many times have you listened to the song now? It's been almost a week.
About 10 times on the first day.
Yeah.
About 5 times on the 5th day. And then at least once or twice every day this past week.
Yeah. I listened to it 3 or 4 times the first day because I was I don't want to get burnt out on one particular song. So when the album comes out, I go, oh, it's this song again.
Hmm.
But what I found myself is at least once a day since then, I've gone back to listen to the song. But as the week got further along, it started just living in my head.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I'd be like trying to go to sleep and I would hear like the
Let's
riff
return.
or I'd hear the chorus
Yeah.
just stuck in my head. And I'm just like, well, I guess that means it's a good song, right?
Yeah. You
um,
should have seen my fucking face when that first chorus hit. Like
oh, it's great. It's really
it,
catchy.
initially I was like, this is hardwired with more reverb and more
It
80s and oh my good god it fucking rules. Like
so
that's
in comparison, when Hardwired came out, I remember the day that song dropped, and I remember I just thought it was pretty good. And everyone else
mm,
is like, oh my God, it's fast. I'm like, yeah, but fast doesn't equal good. This is a situation where I heard the song and I go, this is actually pretty damn good. And then the more I listened to it, the more I liked it. And
yeah.
and so I actually feel like I'm more excited for this album than I was for Hardwired. But that being said, there's a lot of talk because the song is very reminiscent of not only their early stuff, but a lot of their influences. And the fact that the album is, you know, was it 37 seasons? Is that what it's called? Not 30.
72.
37 is like a fucking Kevin
You were
Smith
halfway
thing.
there.
37 dicks. My girlfriend sucked 37 dicks in a row. Um, 72 seasons. And it has something to do with like the beginning years of life or something like that, from what I read in the description of the formative years. And so
Yeah.
it makes me feel like, is this going to be a bunch of stuff where they try to write a bunch of throwback songs? Because if that's the case, I may be underwhelmed by the album. And I know I go completely against everybody else because all these people are just like, I hope it sounds like Kill 'Em All. And I'm just like, oh God, I don't want them to do that. They did it already.
Yeah.
I would rather them still do middle of the road Metallica than go back and try to write classic thrash or just classic metal type tunes. But I'm going to love it either way. It's.
For me personally, I mean, phew, I mean that there's a trajectory from Kill 'Em all the way through to Saint Anger where they're pushing some sort of envelope,
Yeah.
where they're like, you could argue that Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets are kind of similar, but they just got really good at doing what they were doing with that. They got more
Yeah.
technical on Justice, flipped the complete opposite way with the Black Album, went even further with Load and Reload. And then, if you exclude kind of Garage Inc. and S&M and that, you reach Saint Anger, which was
But even
wild.
that,
Yeah.
S&M was an experiment in itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
Where
even Death Magnetic,
mm,
if you take it for what it is, was actually kind of an experiment for them as well. Because not
yeah.
only it was a lot of it was taking them out of their comfort zone,
Mm,
and doing music they hadn't done in a long time, but also working with somebody they'd never worked with. Following that
yeah.
up with fucking Lulu, they've literally just done, in my opinion, nothing that doesn't come across as some sort of step forward in some way,
Mm,
or like I say, sometimes it's a step up and sometimes it's out.
yes.
I feel like everything has been some sort of there's been some sort of different vibe to everything they've done, even with Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets, where I said it's more of a expansion of what they did on Ride the Lightning.
For sure. I definitely think like I, I'm pretty sure it's Greg Fiddleman again this
Yeah,
time around.
yeah.
Yeah, you can tell the production is hear me out. They've taken what they did with Hardwired,
Mhm.
but they've given it the missing piece
The
to my
balls.
ear. Yeah. Like to me, the big thing that stood out to me was how fucking good James sounded with that reverb tail kind of on his voice.
Oh
That
yeah,
adds so much to the mix and it's subtle, but it's there.
yeah.
And when you
It's
hone in on
effective.
it, yeah, cuz for a long time James's vocals have been quite dry, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but
Eh,
I want vocals to soar, you know?
yeah, yeah, especially in
Yeah.
something like that. I do agree that the sound is similar, but yeah, I noticed that on this particular song because one of my big gripes on Hardwired was the sound of the snare because
Mm,
sometimes there was too much treble and not enough thickness in the snare sound to where it sounded
that
very light sometimes, but this one it sounds a little bit heavier, and I kind of
yeah.
dig that. The big thing that everyone's talking about is Lars, obviously though, because of the
Mm-hmm.
double bass on the weird thing is that people that aren't actually Metallica fans,
Mm-hmm.
and some of them will say they are, but they only really like the old stuff and don't know fuck all about anything that happened after the Black Album, even though they have an opinion. But they will say things like, you know, Lars can't play the double bass or like that. But I'm like, you
That's
watch
nowhere
footage of
near
you
the
watch footage of
fastest.
but you watch footage of them recording. Like, I'm not even
Yeah.
talking about old stuff. Death Magnetic and Hardwired, there's studio footage where you're seeing his feet and him
Yeah.
playing the fucking double kick.
Yeah.
So whether or not he decides to eliminate some of that in the live setting, because I know he does that, but it's
Mm-hmm.
because it's a fucking 2.5 hour gig where he
Yeah.
does more physically than most people would ever be able to do in 2.5 hours. That's why
Yeah.
that's why I hate it when people give him shit, because I'm all like, you couldn't do it. There's
Mhm.
there are drummers that could, but most people with a fucking opinion on Lars could not do what he does. And he can do
Yeah.
the double bass.
And like the thing is for me is like sure, Dyer's Eve, right? So
I mean,
much
they don't play
of
that anymore for a reason, probably.
yeah.
That's too
Well,
fast.
well, the thing is, like, as well, when they did, you know, Lars would substitute the with a
Yeah.
you haven't lost everything. Of course, I mean, on the album, it sounds fucking
Well, I
awful.
feel like for
But
this particular song, you can't lose that double bass because
nah,
it's that overkill by Motorhead type thing.
yeah,
It's such an important part to that intro and that part of the song that he's gonna have to step his shit up. Because when I see them live and there's no double bass, I'm gonna call him out on it. Which I did get tickets, by the way. I don't know if you know that. I got
nice.
tickets to the. Here's the fucking thing. I was like, I'm probably not going to be able to afford to go because you're paying for two shows.
Hmm.
Each show, there's no one show tickets. It's just two shows. Each show has completely different set list.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, there's no way I'm gonna be able to afford it. So I went there just on a whim, and I said, you know what? I'm going to reverse this and say, show me, because I did the fifth member early entry or early whatever, where I could get
Yep.
the tickets earlier than the general public. And I was like, show me the best of the cheap seats. And my seats are not close by any means, but they were $100.
Wow.
That's $50 a show. And one of the shows is fucking Pantera and Mammoth Van Halen kids band
Yeah.
playing. And I'm like, I mean, even if it is pretty far away because it's a stadium, I'm still like in the fucking room with Metallica 2 nights playing completely different set lists. I'm like, that is a fucking steal right there. $100 a ticket.
I'll be honest, I saw Metallica at Twickenham Stadium
Uh-huh.
in 2019, before the pandemic came and fucked everything up for two
Yeah.
years. But yeah, I remember I was in one of the, you know, upper seated areas, pretty
Yeah.
much as far from the stage as you could get, but I had a complete view of everything. I
Yeah.
took everything in, and I'm not gonna lie, you know those giant pyro towers that shot flames out of the top of them?
Yeah.
I damn near had my fucking eyebrows singed off because I was right there. I was like eye level with the flames. So when they
Yeah.
went off, it was like it was like a giant blowtorch in my face. But yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I'm very much looking forward to that. 2023 is going to be a good year for me already, just because in, I believe it's May, I'm going to see Anthrax, and then August I'm going to see Metallica. I'm just like, that's
nice.
two of my favorites right there, and so that's pretty exciting. Anyway, that's
Yeah.
anything else you want to say about Metallica? I feel like we've wedged in Metallica talk in the beginning of this episode.
Well, sandwiched in between your two things you're looking forward to, I will be going to Download Festival where
Oh,
Metallica are playing to separate nights, and it's a 4-day thing
Are
this
you going to
time.
all 4 days?
Potentially, I mean,
Okay,
I'm definitely seeing both Metallica sets. So
that's
depending
fucking
on what,
sweet.
yeah, depending on what day they fall on. Now, I
Yeah.
will say this: I'm gonna have to do some serious fucking homework on so many bands because the lineup is pretty much, barring Metallica, largely new bands to me, or
Yeah.
bands that I've only casually heard and enjoyed a couple songs. I
Yeah.
suppose like a couple, you know, exceptions to the rule would probably be Ghost and Municipal Waste. But aside from that, the rest of the lineup, I'm gonna have to fucking grind.
Yeah, I have to admit, when I saw the lineup for that, I wasn't, because Download is usually chock full of a lot of bands I want to see, but this time I'm like, oh, it's really just Metallica.
Yeah,
The other bands I either don't know or don't really, I wouldn't really want to go see, which is why
my
why I'm glad that that's not how I'm dealing with it over here, because I just wouldn't go probably.
I will say my partner said that if it weren't for the fact Metallica was playing twice, she would probably have cancelled her ticket.
Yeah, I
But yeah,
go no, go ahead.
that's all I had to say.
I was going to say though, considering that I've found that with my Metallica ticket, I get to see this quote unquote Pantera reunion. Have you seen the footage of them from their first show back?
Uh, Not really. I mean, I've seen little bits, but I've not seen anything to make a concise.
It
I I mean, if they want to get up and play songs, cool.
Well, here's the thing. I love Charlie Benante, so I want to support it just for him.
Hmm.
And for what they were doing, the little clips I saw sounded good, but here's the problem, and I feel like this is a me problem, and people like me, which I feel like there's not very many of us. In order for Phil to sing the songs, they're playing it at a key that is so low that a couple of times I didn't know what song it was. They did Mouth for
Wow.
War. I think it was Mouth for War, and I no, it's that and Cowboys from Hell, where I was like, what song is this? So much so that it changes the entire mood of the song, where instead of like
Wow.
it's like it's like, and I'm just like, well, just at that point, maybe don't do it. But people seem to be loving it, and maybe I'll change my tune when I'm seeing it live. Maybe the energy will be there and I'll have a good time. And but
Hmm.
it's kind of underwhelming from that aspect, because I have something weird in my brain. Megadeth does that shit too. They play songs at such a low key that I go, this is a completely different song now. Especially in songs that like shift to like different parts here and there, and all of a sudden you're like, whoa, where are we now in this song? Because especially when you have a song ingrained in your head, like Hangar 18 or something like that.
Yeah.
It's weird, but once again, that's nitpicking. And if they're having a good time and they're making a profit and they're getting Pantera music out there, maybe to some people that don't already know it, then great. Yeah,
I'd imagine as well, probably in the room, the vibe is probably a lot different. Like
probably.
in terms of like everybody's just glad to see him there playing the song,
Yeah.
Also Pantera's a drinking band anyway, so
Yeah.
like
That's what I got to do. That night, I'm gonna be
yeah.
like, just make sure I have enough beers in me before Pantera starts.
But yeah,
Um. Anyway, that's enough. That's enough unrelated talking. We kind of this is we don't normally do that. It's almost like we did like a topical portion of the episode of what's
yes,
going on in current events, and
news
now we're moving
roundup.
on to the meat of the episode, which is our top 10 favorite albums of 1994. Like I
Yes.
already said, this one was rough. And yeah, I left so many good ones behind that if a couple of them are on your list, I'm gonna be like, fuck yeah. I'm gonna be so happy that they're there. But I really had to I almost had to do like some sort of chart where I was just like, how many of the songs are bangers on the album that unfuckwithable? How long has this album been in my life? How much effect has this album had on me over the years? I literally did way too much homework for this episode in order to narrow down 35 albums to 10 albums. And I'm still a little weary of my choices. Three of the albums on my list are the only albums that those bands ever released. Like that's
Wow.
yeah.
Holy shit.
So that's pretty fascinating. But did you have as hard of a time? Did you have a lot to choose from?
I mean, you know, it being as you know, anything pre my birth, I'm always going to be playing catch up to some extent because,
Sure.
you know, you have a 20-year head start over me.
Well, fuck, 1994, I was
Yeah.
16 years old. I was in the shit. Like I was already into that, trying to discover all the fucking music that I could all the time. Give me the new shit. Because one, you went through it too. Once you in your early teens or whenever it happens, once you have that feeling that you realize that a good piece of music can give you that fucking feeling where it's just like in your soul and makes it almost like affects who you are. Once you get that feeling, then you're constantly just looking to do it more and more and more. And as a 16-year-old, that's what life was about for me. It was just like, I want to find all the new music. I watched, it doesn't matter what it was. It was if I watched MTV all the time. I read the metal magazines. I, would talk to friends who listen to other bands. I would look at the shit on, the thank you list on albums and then go listen to those bands. I was just trying my best to find whatever the fuck I could. So that was a big deal. But there's a lot of good shit in 1994. I guess let's go ahead and start then. What did you have as your? Oh, hold on, I forgot. I had something else I wanted to do. I apologize, folks. This is important though. I don't know if you saw it, but I think you did. A few days ago, I posted from our Spotify Wrapped for Cranked and Ranked.
Yes.
Now I wanted to give a few shout outs because the thing that was interesting is that our podcast is available on many other places aside from Spotify. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, like all these different places that you can go and listen to our podcast. But just on Spotify alone, the things that I saw, I was like, this is fascinating because it said that we were in the top 25% of most shared globally, which that's pretty cool. But here's the one that got me: the top 10% of most followed. And I'm just like, 10%? Like there's a lot of podcasts. We're in the top 10% of most followed. And I'm just like, where's our fucking sponsor? So what I wanted to say was one of the main things said that there were a lot of people where we were their top podcast of the year. And it said that there were 305 people that we were their number one podcast on Spotify. And then another few hundred we were in the top 5, and then another few hundred we were in the top 10. So I'm like, wow, that's pretty sweet. But there were 3 guys in particular that over on my various social medias, they posted the pictures of their thing, and it had the minutes that they listened this year. And so I wanted to give those guys shout outs if you're listening, which hopefully you are, or watching on YouTube. First up, we have Darren Quinn, who listened this year for 634 minutes.
Wow.
That's pretty damn good. Then we have Greg Meyer, who listened to us for 1,694 minutes this year.
Whoa.
And then Jarlath O'Grady listened to us for 2,925 minutes this year. Woo! So, gentlemen, we salute you, Peanut Butter Platypus, and anyone else that I don't know that we were your number one podcast. Feel free to drop me a line at oldheadpodcast@gmail.com and let me know how many minutes can you beat 2,925 minutes listened to Cranked. God, I got so excited. I forgot who we were. Anyway, I just wanted to thank those people and thank everyone out there, because sometimes it feels like we're talking to nobody. Sometimes it feels like we're talking to 10 people. And then occasionally I have to remind myself, like, well, there are a good amount of people that, weekly we're giving them some kind of escape or some kind of enjoyment. And
yeah,
it's pretty sweet.
It's a good feeling. And the thing to remember as well is, we only really read the YouTube comments
Yeah.
because that's the only one with comments.
Yeah.
Whereas everything else, but it all adds up. And well, thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's great. And I can't I wish that they did these kind of things for, because I don't think they do it for Apple Podcasts, but eventually there's got to be some way to consolidate everything so you know exactly, a podcast chart, like a Billboard chart, where they
Hmm.
just do they have one of those where they combine all of the things and then they show you, because it seems like it's per platform and not all podcasts all together.
They gotta have something. Yeah.
Eventually I feel like they will. Anyway, so yeah, so here let's get on with the meat of 305 people's number one podcast on Spotify. And that is the top 10 albums of 1994. All right,
Cool.
finally we're here. What is your number
Nice.
10 album of 1994?
Okay, so my number 10 album of 1994 is Purple by Stone Temple Pilots.
Sweet.
So this album is, it's my second favorite Stone Temple Pilots album.
Yeah.
I'll admit I do miss the wet, chorusy, weird, chimey vibes of Core. Like,
Mhm.
Core is so ingrained into what I love about that era of rock that
Yeah.
it can be hard for me to divorce. I have a similar problem with 10 and the rest of Pearl Jam's discography,
Yeah.
because I'm like, I love 10's sound and sonic aesthetic so much that any other Pearl Jam album is like, I can't fuck with this. It's really good. I just wish it had a little more reverb on the whole mix. But
Yeah.
that being said though, I mean, songs like Meat Plow, Vaseline, Interstate Love Song, fucking Silver Gun Superman, Big Empty. I mean, it's an album that I do love.
Yeah.
Um, Maybe not as much as Core, but god damn, dude, whenever I hear this, I'm like, oh yeah, there's a reason this is liked,
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember the first time I heard it, and 1994 is kind of like the beginner of an era of grower albums for me,
Yeah.
where it's like they kind of take a couple listens to sink in. There's a few of those on my list actually, but they've gone on to be some of my favorites. That being said, there are 9 songs I like, but 9 albums. Sorry,
Albums.
yeah, sorry.
That's all
Damn,
right.
it's only the first one, and I'm already tripping up.
That's all right. So that's a good I mean, it's a great album. So my number 10, I'm going a little more extreme with this. With the first of 3 albums, that this was the only album that this band put out. My number 10 is Point Blank by Nail Bomb,
Nice.
which, if you don't know, is a side project with Max Cavalera from Sepultura and Alex Newport from Fudge Tunnel. And they have, other people playing with them. I think
Yeah.
Andreas is on. No, he's not. Andreas isn't on there. Anyway, I don't know. There's other people from Sepultura on there, and stuff like that. Words not working now, but let's move on. No, I'm just kidding. So Nail Bomb. Let's cut that out.
Top 10 most followed.
Yeah, that's what you get, guys. So I when Nail Bomb came out, it was like a big deal, and I didn't know anything about it. I don't know how it wasn't on my radar, but I remember just being in the record store in 94 and just seeing this album that had a sticker on it that said featuring Max from Sepultura and Alex from Fudge Tunnel. And I loved both of those bands at that point. And I'm just like, holy shit, I'm going to get this. And I love the album because it's like very aggressive, but also they're experimenting with industrial sounds on some of the tracks. And there's just a really sort of enjoyable, who gives a shit kind of vibe to the album, because they didn't try to write really complicated lyrics or complicated riffs. It's almost like a metal and industrial through like a punk rock kind of mindset. And it's just so good. I love the combination of Max and Alex's voices on it, and I love the little bits of 90s industrial kind of shit that's on it. And it's just like it's one of those albums that I think really sounds like 1994 to me, because in 94, like, parts of metal were getting more aggressive and other parts were getting more experimental, and I feel like Nail Bomb is kind of a an example of like both of those things at the same time.
Yeah.
And yeah, they played one concert as Nail Bomb and put out a live album of that one concert, and then that was it.
Yeah.
I'm going to say they've never done anything again, even though Max did go on tour as Nail Bomb, and that was really dumb because Alex Newport was not there. And if I ever get a chance to interview Alex Newport, which we're still in talks to eventually make that happen, I'm going
Nice.
to ask him all about that. Like, did you know anything about this? Because I know he probably wouldn't even be bothered to do it. But anyway, it's a classic for me. It's been one that like I've loved ever since it came out, and I love the experimental and aggressive nature of the album, and it's just fun as fuck. So that's my number 10, Point Blank from Nail Bomb.
Very nice. I'm keeping it in the kind of grunge zone for mine for now. So
Okay.
next up, some might think that this is kind of sacrilegiously low on my list, but I have a reason for that. And my number 9 is Super Unknown by Soundgarden.
Okay. This is not even on my list, so I'm very happy that it's on yours. This is one of the classic ones that I had to leave behind.
Damn, dude.
Yeah.
So like I said with the previous one, this one's really grown on me over the years.
Uh-huh.
Excellent songwriting. I mean, Let Me Drown, My Wave, Fell on Black Days, fucking Mailman, dude.
Limo Wreck is on there too. There's a lot of really fucking great songs on that album.
And we haven't even mentioned Black Hole Sun or Spoon Man yet.
Fucking Spoon, yeah, Spoon Man. I mean, I love that. That's why it hurts me to leave this off, because there's so much on it that I love. But it is an album that didn't stick with me for like my entire life. There are songs I've always loved, but it's kind of it comes and goes in my life as one that I really want to listen to. Soundgarden for me is Louder Than Love and Bad Motorfinger. Like, those are the ones I always go to.
I
But
am the same. Yeah.
yeah, but I love
Like
Super
that.
Unknown.
Yeah, like that's the thing. The day I tried to live, man. 4th of July. My thing is, and I remember we mentioned this in the Soundgarden episode, or at least I did. I like Soundgarden's early, dirty, grungy sound,
Yeah.
whereas this is a lot more cleaned up. Kind of sounds so well recorded that I feel like it takes away some of the dirt vibe.
Yeah.
And people will point to it that Super Unknown and say, oh, it's one of the best sounding recordings of the 1990s. Yes, but did grunge make a name for itself for sounding, palatable? That being said, the songs on this are just so fucking good, and I
Yeah.
can't deny that. And over the years, this one's grown and grown and grown on me. But I remember you said something as well, and I felt kind of dumb for always feeling it. But like, I remember when you finally said it, I felt totally comfortable about it. When I hear this album, I hear that he cut his hair, and it was just like the end
Yeah.
of the era.
Yeah, it does. It does sound like
Yeah.
Soundgarden with short haircuts.
Yeah, yeah.
Which you could.
And
That's like load and reload. That sound like Metallica with haircuts.
And I know it's kind of shallow to say that on the surface, but to me, long hair Soundgarden is an era, and then short hair Soundgarden is an era, and I don't mean that as in just image wise. I mean sonically, they
Yeah.
took a step in a more I don't want to say professionally recorded direction, because all of their stuff sounds good.
Yeah.
But there's a dirtiness to their earlier albums that I just prefer over Super Unknown. But my ears are like, yeah, but the songs though, the songs are fucking killer. So,
Yep.
you know, obviously it's going to make my list for 1994. And I think very highly of most of Soundgarden's discography. So,
Yeah.
um, with that, oh, we did an episode on Soundgarden and Stone Temple
And
Pilots.
yeah, and STP. Yeah.
Yep. So if you haven't heard those, go check those out if you like a bit of grunge. Um, but yeah, back over to you for your number nine.
We actually just talked about this band. This is my number 9 album of 1994, Far Beyond Driven by
Nice.
Pantera. And I got the original one. I don't. This is not the original cover. This is the original vinyl. And for some reason, the CD and cassette had one artwork on it, and then the LP had a different one, which I don't really
Yeah.
like this one as much. It's I'm
I
not.
always preferred the blue.
I'm not
I
all
always
about. I don't like butthole action. Some except for sometimes. Um, but yeah, Far Beyond Driven. It's a very special album for me, just because it's another. All of these, for the most part, I could say I remember where I bought the album. Like, I remember I bought Nail Bomb on cassette originally at Tower Records. I bought Far Beyond Driven at Best Buy. And it's like one of those things where it's just so ingrained in my head. Like, even I know where I got all these albums from. And it's one that, like, I for a long time, it was one that I thought that I enjoyed more than Vulgar Display of Power or Cowboys from Hell. I just thought it was amazing. And honestly, about half of the material now, I would still say, is some of their strongest stuff. But as the years have gone on, Cowboys and Vulgar have both kind of risen above it as like, I think, just overall as albums better. We
yeah.
did a Pantera ranking as well, a two-parter, I believe, of the Pantera ranking.
Yep. We didn't puss out. We included the 80s stuff as well.
Yeah. And
So
but I just think it's a really badass, aggressive 90s metal album. It goes a little lower on the list for me, just because I think that the latter half has a few songs that I go, these are not as kick-ass as the rest of it.
hmm.
And but yeah, it's just fucking, Slaughtered is my favorite Pantera song. It is ridiculously good. And I'm
Oh yeah.
Broken is amazing. It's just like chock full of cool shit. And it's like, at this point, talking about Pantera, like, I think all the people that like Pantera know all about Pantera. I think at this point, there's a camp of people that absolutely hate Pantera, and then the people that love Pantera. And you know, I love them. They're great. And I mean, we'll find out what happens with this fucking reunion thing. But anyway, Far Beyond Driven is I feel like that was the most, like, eloquent album, whatever, that I've ever done. I couldn't even come up with a word for it. Anyway, all right. That was my number 9. Now we're on to your number 8 album of 1994.
Cool. So this one is a little bit more of it's like a deep cut of the grunge thing. I've gone with Hungry for Stink by L7.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so this is their fourth album, and when you get an L7 album, you kind of know what you're in for.
Yeah.
Like 10 to 12 songs of just metallic, punky grunge,
Mm-hmm.
fun songs, dirty attitude. Throwing a tampon at a rowdy crowd member. It's uh, yeah, it badass energy runs through pretty much any L7 release. I've always been a big fan, especially Bricks Are Heavy and fuck, what's it called?
Smell the
Smell the
Magic.
Magic. That's
Yeah.
the one. Yeah. But this one's also really good too. And it's really heavy at points. Like Andre is a pretty chuggy opener. Baggage, The Bomb, where's that one? Fuel My Fire. But it's also got like fun, eccentric songs like Riding with a Movie Star, fucking Shirley. It's just how many songs is it? Yeah, it's just 12 songs, 45 minutes of just heavy punky grunging, and I have a great time listening to it. Again, it's one of those where they're a band where you kind of know what you're gonna get,
Sure.
but they do it well.
Yeah.
So
I mean, that's
yeah,
there's something to be said for just putting on an album and having a good time.
for
Like
sure.
there's,
And I feel like they were one of the grunge bands, or quote unquote, grunge bands
yeah,
who embraced a little bit of, a tongue in cheek, let's have a fucking party vibe. Because I
sure.
feel like a lot of the grunge bands took themselves quite seriously, whereas bands like L7 were like, yeah, we fit in with these guys, but we're pranksters and we'll have some fucking fun. All female band, by the way, in case anybody didn't know. These are
Yeah.
like the kind of Riot Girl kind of, but they always had a great time. I remember seeing like videos of them doing pranks on Faith No More when they
Yeah.
toured with them. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, when it comes to that moniker of like an all female band, I think L7 are up there as one of the best.
yeah,
Really. But yeah, that album's not on my list, but it's a damn good one. Are you done with that one?
I am
All right, I'm gonna be
hungry
real.
for steak.
I'm gonna be really quick because what are we on? Seven, eight. My number 8 is Purple by
Hey,
Stone Temple Pilots,
nice.
which Eddie already talked about. 12 gracious melodies to
Of
listen.
gracious melodies.
I This was my number 1 on the STP ranking, and I just think it's a fantastic album. It is of that
Because
era.
you enjoyed them.
uh, I did, and the when it comes to like the you know 90s popular grunge albums, I Purple to me is one of the best ones. It's
Mm,
up there with Dirt and Nevermind as just albums that I think I said this on the episode. I feel like it's them kind of becoming themselves, where I feel
mm,
like there was so much of their sound on Core, while I love that album, that sounded so similar to what other bands were doing, and then on Purple it's almost like that they just kind of became their own version of it. Still fit
mm.
in, but they were trying new things, and it's just a real confident and powerful 90s alternative rock album, and still has the fucking heaviness that I prefer from Stone
Yeah.
Temple Pilots. But I don't have a lot to add. It's a great album, and these my bottom 5, like, honestly kept all like switching randomly. I would hear one song from one and go, oh, it's going to move up. Oh, I got to move that one up. And so finally, I just had to stop here. And so my number 8 is Purple by Stone Temple Pilots. Moving on. No, what was that? Yes, and now I'm moving on to number 7. God damn it!
Cool. So my number 7 is we're finally stepping out of the grunge zone.
All right,
We're still kind of in that, you could get a date by playing this sort of thing to a certain type of girl. But that being said, we've got the Downward Spiral by Nine Inch Nails.
nice. Another one that fell off of my list, but killer album.
Damn, dude. Yeah, like this is widely considered Nine Inch Nails kind of opus. It's
Mm-hmm.
innovative and strange, but very memorable. Uh, it expands the Nine Inch Nails sound off of everything they've done, and then, like you said, it goes out.
Yeah,
It has like synthy, cool, industrial, hooky bits like on Pretty Hate Machine, but it also has the chugging heaviness of Broken, but it also has a bunch of other crazy shit that Trent
yeah,
was just like, fuck it, we're doing it all, you know? And, it being a concept album about, someone's descent into madness and eventual, demise, it's a dark album, but it's one that is a fun journey to go on.
yeah. Yeah.
albeit it's dark subject matter. That being said, I mean, when you've got songs like fucking, I mean, Mr. Self Destruct is just brutal, and then Piggy totally juxtaposes that with this chill, vibey thing.
Yeah.
Heresy, Heresy is probably my favorite song on the whole album. Like, I just love that. It This song is the marriage of what I love about Pretty Hate Machine and what I love about Broken in a
Yeah.
single song. Like, I'll never get tired of hearing that shit. Like, I love that. We haven't even got to March of the Pigs and Closer yet, and like, I mean, Closer is iconic in
Yeah.
itself. Ruiner is like wild. It This is the one with like that blues rock guitar solo in the middle, isn't it? Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, the Becoming, it is like, it's like they took a groovy metal riff, deconstructed it, and put it back together with like Trent Reznor's future filmmaker brain, with that down 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 stuff going on. I Do Not Want This, Big Man with a Gun, Warm Place, Eraser, Reptile, Downward Spiral, and Hurt.
All killer.
I mean, it really is an all killer, no filler, right the way through. You're gonna sit and listen to every fucking one of these songs
We
the intended way.
we also did Nine Inch Nails, a two-parter on Nine Inch Nails. Was it a two-parter? I believe it was.
It was, yeah, yeah. We
Yeah.
did a
We
two-parter.
said a lot of nice things about the Downward Spiral because it's an absolute classic of the 90s. And yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. That's another great one. I was hoping that somebody would mention that because it's not, I say somebody, I mean you. because
I was gonna
because
say, whose show is this?
there were too many other ones to that knocked everything else out. And there's one other in particular that I hope is on your list, but if not, maybe I'll mention it later. But my my number 7 is Dogman by King's
Nice.
X, the fifth King's X album, their heaviest album. And I don't know what we have not done a King's X ranking, but we will. I was supposed to see them a couple weekends ago, but the guitar player got COVID and the show was canceled.
Oh no.
And it's all right. They'll reschedule again. That show's been rescheduled like 4 times now.
But
But
I'm long overdue a deep dive on King's X. I mean, I've
yeah,
pretty much heard the top 10 songs on Spotify and really liked them.
it's
But there's a lot of
going to
stuff
be
there.
that's going to be a Rush style undertaking when we when we do their ranking, because they have a lot of albums and a lot to go through. But Dogman is like I said, it's their heaviest. It's their most like direct, and it almost feels like it's because even with the album prior to this, even though it was in the 90s, it still felt like it was more in line with their 80s output. Whereas Dogman feels like the first like 90s King's X album. It's got such a fucking heavy groove through the whole album. And it's produced by what's his name that did Stone Temple, Brendan O'Brien. So it's got that sound. It's a big 90s sound, but cutting some of the reverb, but leaving some of it there and making it beefier and heavier. And it's just like classics, absolute classic songs. The song Dogman is fucking classic. Shoes is on here, which is a fucking classic. Pillow is a fucking amazing song. It's just an absolute crusher of a King's X album, along with their big old harmony vocals on top of all that. And it's another example of why they are noted as being kind of influential to the grunge scene, because a lot of that stuff became part of the grunge scene. Heavy riffs along with melodic vocals, sometimes layered harmony vocals, like Alice in Chains and shit. Anyway, yeah, King's X album is fucking amazing, but yeah, there's 6 others that that knocked it down to this point. So that's pretty crazy. But yeah, anyway, that was my number 7, Dogman.
Right on. Now, this one, for me, I doubt this is on your list or was even considered for yours,
Okay.
but I'm gonna say it. The spiritual changing of the guard transitional album to me that kind of wraps up the old school metal era and ushers in the sound of kind of modern metal going forward. I can't lie though, I fucking love this album. Burn My Eyes by Machine Head.
Oh yeah, not even
Yeah.
was not even in my 35 list of albums.
Here's the thing, right? The thing I love about this one is it manages to have that like kind of modern heavy sound
Yeah,
without the clinical side of things. You know,
sure.
it still has an old school vibe, but all of the groove and heaviness and like taking the Pantera kind of thing and just laying into the groove even harder, just riff wise.
Yeah.
Not like less lead focus and more just fucking breakdowns and heavy ass shit and really cool groovy riffs. Davidian, game changer. You know, that breakdown at the end. I remember the first time I heard that and I had my head blown off. Like that. I thought that was badass.
Yeah.
Old has a really cool riff in it. Thousand Lies, None But My Own. Rage to Overcome is a really great song. Death Church. Nation on Fire is this like slow burner that just completely goes thrash mode at the end. Blood for Blood is a full on thrasher. I'm Your God Now. Realize, Real Lies is this like cool interlude with a lot of cool fucking stuff in there. I mean, it's kind of a cringy title, but like I'm pretty sure it's pulled from a saying
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of cool like clips of gang warfare news reports and stuff in there. And then Block is just a fucking crushing closer. Honestly, it's just a really really strong 90s groove metal album. There's not really much else I'd say. I remember having a conversation with my uncle who is very responsible for me getting into heavy metal, and he said, I asked him, am I right in thinking 1994 is where modern metal as we know it was kind of born and the old school era kind of like fades back a little bit? And he went, if you're referring to Burn My Eyes and Korn's debut, you are 100% correct.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's to me, I mean, I have a more positive opinion of Machine Head than you do.
Well, yeah, I clearly it's a classic album because tons of people love it, and all the songs I've ever heard from Machine Head all range from this is not very good to it's fine, it's just not really for me. And that's the thing that makes me nervous now, because now that we've ranked Slipknot, I'm all like, is it going to become the thing where we go to Machine Head and then I 100% don't like them? I'm just like, never mind.
It'll be. I'm really keen at some point to just drop you in the fucking deep end with a band. Like I'm thinking, I've had it in my head for a long time. There's two bands that I would suggest for this, and I know one of them is going to be likely more achievable, but I think the other one would yield a spicier response.
Okay. Well, what are your thoughts?
And I'm thinking to myself, you either do a deep dive into Machine Head or I fucking throw you in the deep end with Dream Theater.
Oh,
and
shit.
I know you're going to be way more down for Machine Head because Machine Head have way less output and they evolve more.
Yeah.
So
I mean, we'll get to both of those because I think they're important to talk about. Yeah, I don't know which one I would choose. I'd probably at this point choose Dream Theater just because I've heard less of their stuff than I have Machine Head. But at the same time,
bands, but yeah.
Yeah. I just feel like there's something missing from some of that stuff that just doesn't catch on with me, and I'm not quite sure what it is. But you know what? The most I had a very
It's me
interesting.
badgering you. Check this out. Check this out. Check this out.
I had a very interesting request yesterday. I think somebody messaged me and said, "Can you guys rank Eddie Money?" And I'm just like, I'd never thought about ranking Eddie Money, but then I went, that could be fun.
And
So
I'm gonna throw my hand up and say I have heard all of those albums.
okay. Well, then maybe we'll add that to our list, and eventually we'll get to Eddie Money. Very, very different from both Machine Head and Dream Theater. But yeah, I mean, okay. I understand. Like, there are albums that I don't like, but they get enough recognition that's when I just say, well, I guess this is just not for me. But I can't say that it's not important or not good, because if that many people hold it in that regard, then it's just me. Right. It's just me that's disconnected from it. So, but
and who knows? It's perfectly okay to admit that, because not everybody likes everything.
I wish more people would come at things that way, because there's a whole lot of people that like to talk shit about stuff, and I'm like, well, I
don't like this, so it's bad.
Yeah, I'm just like, well, you just don't like it. Like, what? It's like, if you already don't like it, then you're trying to like be nitpicky about it. I'm like, no, that's. I mean, in our case, I save that for when we do rankings. But any other time in my life, if somebody says, "What do you think about Machine Head?" my response is always going to be, "It's not really for me." It's not going to be me all of a sudden listing all the things that I think are shitty about them. It's like, because I'm like, I'm a better person than that, folks. I think. Anyway, but, so what that was number 6, right? Do you have anything else to say about Burn My Eyes?
Every
time I say that, I want to say Burn My Ass.
Well, judging by the album cover, have you ever noticed, like, it kind of looks like a dude giving another dude a little bit of a, like, it's supposed to look like the guy is like reeling back after being electrocuted, but it's like just two kind of silhouetted things of a dude bent over and a dude like this behind him. And I remember someone pointed it out to me, and I've never been able to unsee it. And now every time I look at it, I'm like, it burned my eyes, more like fuck my butt.
If there's one thing, that's one thing that would get me on board. If there were more sort of, really heavy aggressive metal that just openly embraced gay LGTB.
Oh, hell yeah.
Culture.
That'd be fucking sick.
My brain froze on all the letters, but I know them all. And then, but yeah, I would be, for some reason, I would just be like, yeah, fuck yeah, more of that.
Just the gay bar scene in Wayne's World 2, but it's a mosh pit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So, all right, number 6. Very influential band, another band we already ranked, and Betty by Helmet.
Nice.
This is like a 10-inch version of the album. It's like two 10-inch records instead of for people in the podcast side of things. I bring my records and I show them. But yeah, it's I think like in America, this is how this was released on vinyl in '94, was the 10-inch version. And it has like extra tracks on it and shit. And that's, fucking sweet. Anyway, Betty is such a fucking cool album. It's not my favorite Helmet album, but it's probably one that's more influential. Like Meantime is very influential on me as a guitarist and a songwriter. But I think with Betty, how they kind of tried to incorporate different elements to some of the songs, and it that kind of stuff around the early to mid 90s was for some reason very potent to me, just because I was already the kind of person that thought, I don't want to be stuck listening to the same shit and writing the same shit all the time. Even though like I loved all the heavy music, I was constantly looking for other things as well. And if you brought me an album with 12 songs where they were all the same vibe, even though it was killer, if you bring me another album with 12 songs where 4 of them are kind of experimental weird shit, I'd be like, I kind of like that better because I like the different flavors and it breaks up the album and it just sort of it gives it more of an album feel and less of a grouping of songs feel. And yeah, Betty's an amazing album, fucking killer ass riffs out the wazoo, as they say. That's another saying that I don't know what that means. What the fuck is a wazoo? I
I
guess
don't
I
know,
should look that up. But yeah,
man.
we did Helmet, and I don't, and I'm pretty sure Betty was not my number one. I shouldn't even say what our number ones were because I want you guys to go and listen and or watch those rankings that we did because we put a lot of effort into them.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler
But
alert:
yeah,
we had number ones.
I mean, I've
But yeah,
spoiled all of the ones that I've recommended, so
that's all right. That's all right. But
yeah.
yeah, Betty is a killer album, and it's another one. Like I bought that cassette at Circuit City, and I only remember that because the album came out, and a lot of the albums around that time I bought on cassette because I didn't have a job yet and I didn't have a lot of money, and so I was constantly just really wanting to get an album now. But I'm like, look, I have $10. I don't have $13. Or, it's like it was like a few dollar difference between tapes and CDs.
Yeah.
And so I would end up buying the cassette. But I remember like a buddy of mine worked at Circuit City and I went to go visit him and I saw the cassette and I just said, fuck it, I want this album. And so I bought it. And it's just killer. Milk Toast alone is a fucking killer ass song, but there's just so many great songs on that. And yeah, they're an important band to me for two reasons. One, because they've influenced me as a songwriter and a musician, as I said, and a guitar player. And two, because they're one of the few bands where half of their shit I don't care for. And it's been a very important lesson to me in just because you love a band doesn't mean you're going to love everything that they're going to do. And sometimes you just have to let go. And I've done that with
It's
a
all
few
Winona
bands.
Ryder's fault.
Yeah, fuck Winona Ryder. She did it. That's what it's all about. You date Winona Ryder and you know things are never going to get better than that, and then you just start writing less good songs after that. Anyway, yeah. So Betty's amazing, and it's my number 6. Moving on to our top 5 albums of 1994.
Cool. So, my number 5 is one that we've talked about in the last couple of months. It's quite a recent one, and that
Okay.
is World Demise by Obituary.
Oh shit. Yes, this was also on my list of 35, but it didn't make it. But yes.
Yeah, and as per, whenever I talk about Obituary, I have to do it, you dirty. But yeah, now that I've got that out of the way, I'm actually going to start talking in something coherent. So with with that, I mean, this is one of the most crushingly heavy albums I've ever fucking heard.
Yeah, oh
Like,
yeah.
when it comes to death metal, specifically the slow, riff-driven, hardcore influenced death metal that I
Mm-hmm.
adore. I mean, there's absolutely no. Sorry, one sec. Sorry, I had a loose lead in the back of my audio interface and it was bothering the shit out of me. Anyway, World Demise. I mean, it's so fucking heavy, dude. I mean, Don't
Yep.
Care, World Demise, the title track, Burned In, Redefined. I mean, they could have dropped 4 songs of this album as an EP, and it would still be one of the heaviest fucking things ever.
Yeah.
Paralyzing, Lost, Solid State, Splattered, Final Thoughts, Boiling Point, Set in Stone, Kill for Me. This is just. I mean, it's just like a fucking hour of getting your head hit with a sledgehammer in the
Yeah.
best possible way.
We also did
Um,
an obituary ranking, but let's not talk about what our number
yeah,
1 was.
yeah, yeah. See if you can guess how high this one is. um, but yeah, it's an absolutely killer album.
Yeah.
Coming off the tail of like a trilogy of death metal with fast bits, slower bits, mid-paced bits. this album just leans straight into the slow and nasty, which
Yeah.
is, if you're an Obituary fan, largely your favorite part of this, you know? I,
Yeah. It's
at least
it's
to
it's the people
me,
it's the people that are only like partial Obituary fans that are the ones like, why aren't they playing fast? And I'm like, well, they mostly didn't play fast ever.
yeah, yeah. Why are there no blast beats? I can't name a song where Obituary have used a blast beat. Like,
Yep.
not every death metal band has to do the same shit, you fuckers. But yeah, World Demise, it's killer. All crushing all the time.
Yep. Hell yeah. That I had to leave.
Obituary FM.
I that's one of the death metal ones I had to leave off. I also left off Fear, Emptiness, Despair by Napalm Death because I also love that one, but it's
Damn.
just it gets real tough to rank these. But I got five to go. So my number five is another of the. This is the only album this band ever put out. And this is a later discovery for me. I had no idea this album came out in 1994 because there was no promotion
Ooh.
for it, and that's because it's hard to promote. But I did an entire video just talking about this album, like about a year and a half ago or something. Dead Sailor Acid Blues by Orangutan. And most of you probably are like, what? And that's how I was too when I discovered this album. But it is absolutely fantastic. The it so I don't remember this ever being promoted at all in 94. And like I said, I was trying to take in everything I possibly could. And it's telling me my internet connection is unstable again. And I'm just like, fucking damn it, what the fuck is the deal here? Anyway, sorry.
You look all right on this end.
Okay.
All is well.
It's so weird. Anyway, this
Yeah.
album is like it's almost like they are kind of teetering between two worlds in this album because there's stuff that's very heavy, could be more associated with grunginess, and or some of the riffs sound like Helmet riffs. On the other side, it's more just alternative rock with more sort of sprawling type songs and melodic things happening, but they kind of weave in and out of this world of like 1994 where they'll have heavier parts and sort of more melodic parts, but all of the songwriting is absolutely fantastic. And it's just one of those albums that I cannot understand, one, why it didn't catch on in 1994. Well, there was no promotion, but if there was, it should have caught on. But also, number two, like even smaller albums over the years gain some sort of cult following. The cult following for this album is me and a handful of other people. It's not like people don't talk about this album. Like I think people that live, because these guys are from Boston. There's actually two bands on my list from Boston. And I think people in that scene know Orangutan and love them. But outside of that, it's a really small amount of people, and it bums me out. That's why I made an entire video about why that album should have been huge. And I still stand by that. Every time I play it, I'm just like, how is this not a thing that everybody's not talking about? Like criminally underrated albums, this is in the top 5 for me of the 90s. And yeah, I don't have a lot more to add about it, but it's just well written, well performed, really great. And I think that was me in 1994. So they didn't realize that the target audience for the album existed, but it was me, where I was very happy listening to Cannibal Corpse and at the same time listening to Hole, or something. Like I was in the middle of all of that shit, and I appreciated all of that shit. And Orangutan really do like drop him right in the middle of all of that. And anyway, yeah, that's my number 5.
Awesome. So my number 4 is one that you've mentioned, and that
Sweet.
is Far Beyond Driven by Pantera.
Sweet.
Now, this one was kind of low on my Pantera ranking, but Pantera's discography is one of the most consistently killer fucking things ever. So hence its high position on this list. You
Yeah.
know, when you're stacking Pantera next to Pantera, something has to get pushed down.
Sure.
But you know, this shows them upping the ante on the heaviness once again. Uh, it's wild to think that an album this extreme and experimental at points hit number one. You know,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, because some of the moments on this border on the fucking death metal thing, and it is just wild. Um, you know, the riffs and grooves are among the heaviest they ever did. And I mean, look no further than the absolutely pummeling opener, Strength Beyond Strength. That is
Yeah.
just every possible tempo and type of feel they could do. They fit into less than like 4 minutes, and it's just so killer.
Yeah.
Becoming is
Yeah.
that's I love that. Never get tired of that. 5 minutes alone. I'm broken. Fuck man. I mean, you get wild moments like good friends and a bottle of pills. You
Yeah.
know, I fucked your girlfriend last night. You know that line always fucking cracks me up.
Yeah.
Hardline, sunken cheeks, slaughtered, 25 years, shedding skin, used my third arm, throes of rejection, and a really cool vibed out cover of Planet Caravan at the end,
Yep.
which I think I like when heavy albums have a palate cleanser at the end. It's like a little breath mint.
This one needs one. I've always felt like that cover is very appropriate at the end of this album because it's very
Yeah.
pummeling, and then you get a nice little send out. You know.
Yeah. It's like being beaten for 50 minutes straight and then
Yeah.
someone and then they serenade you at the end, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But you know, while it isn't my favorite Pantera album, I love all Pantera albums. So
Mhm.
and you know, I'm gonna say this now. I always thought the, you know, drill bit going through the skull looked cooler than the drill
Yeah.
bit going up the ass. Like
Yeah, it's a cooler aesthetic and concept overall, but I guess the
yeah.
other one seems more extreme, which is with their music they were trying to get more extreme, so it's almost more
Yeah.
appropriate, I guess, for the album.
And like in a weird way, I get it. Like, wow, that's a shocking image, you know, shock value. But to me, I feel like that would do the album a disservice because at that point you'd already be like, oh well, I'm expecting it. Whereas this has like an ominous, foreboding look to it. But
Yeah.
then when you stick it on, you're like, fuck! Like, you know, it's like one of those old Maxell cassette adverts where the dude would get blown across the room from his speakers. But yeah, some of y'all thought I was too young to remember that shit, but you forget that I watched this stuff on YouTube. Um,
The
yeah,
beauty of the internet.
yeah, I get to live in the past. I mean, it's a beloved album by
Yeah.
Pantera fans and groove metal, 90s metal fans alike. It's an album to me that has a lot of stuff that I kind of forget about, and then when I hear the album again, I'm like, oh, this is that song.
Yeah.
Ooh, ooh. But yeah, yeah, yeah. With that, I'm gonna hand it back to you because
Okay.
you know, Far Beyond Driven kicks ass.
Sweet. So the my number four is I love this is like one of my favorite albums of the 90s. I guess I could say that about the next few I'm going to talk about. The Bleeding by Cannibal Corpse is my number four.
Hey,
And this is my favorite Cannibal Corpse album. It's amazing. We did a Cannibal Corpse ranking. I think that was also a two-parter. I don't even
yeah,
remember. It was a
that one was fun.
that was a fun one. But the Bleeding is like that's an album that came out and has blown me away consistently for the rest of my life, where it's so good and it's catchy. It's a
Yeah.
catchy death metal album with so many amazingly awesome moments all the way through it.
Hard to pull off, very hard to pull off catchy
Yeah.
death metal.
And
Like,
Yeah, it is. It's fantastic. It's just, I mean, Cannibal Corpse is one of my favorite bands, but a big reason why I ended up leaving off albums like World Demise and Fear, Emptiness, Despair was because of the strength of the bleeding. I'm like, look, if I have to cut out so many albums, if I'm going to choose one death metal album, which one is it? And there was no fucking contest. It is the bleeding. It is
Yeah.
amazing. Last album with Chris Barnes, and he sounds amazing on it. Um, and honestly, very recently, I got like a bootleg vinyl of Created to Kill, where he did the vocals for what would be the next album. And
Yeah.
honestly, he sounds really good on that. So I'm just like, I mean, it is what it is. I love Corpse Grinder, but I'm just, the bleeding is just like the yeah, the bleeding is just the for death metal for me. It's one of the best ever made, and I love it. It's fucking amazing. So that's my number 4, The Bleeding.
Cool. So here is another album that wasn't in your wheelhouse, I'm sure.
Okay, okay.
So my number 3 is Awake by Dream Theater.
Oh, yep.
So this one, yeah, yeah. This one saw them coming off of the, tale of images and words, and it saw them adopt a bit of a heavier approach to the, a similar kind of atmosphere
Hmm.
and aura around it, but this time we have a 7 string. So, you know, there's all sorts of really cool progressive parts on it. I mean, I feel like you are gonna hear so many moments on this album and be like, that's Rush.
Oh,
There's
well, yeah.
yeah, there is Rush influence running all the way through Dream Theater stuff. Mike Portnoy was always a big influence on me as a drummer.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously his ability far surpasses mine. I'm not to sell myself short, but he has a big kit for a reason because he uses fucking all of it. And he's he's killer. Mike Mangini is also fucking killer as well. He's the current guy.
Oh,
Um,
speaking of drums, just last night I watched the Live Without a Net VHS from Van Halen,
mhm.
and I just love Alex Van Halen's drum setup on that
Yeah,
because he's got tons of these like the little toms that are like this
the
big
octobands.
all in a row, and then electronic drum pads in front of those, and then the rest
Yep.
of his kit, and then the gong behind him. And I'm just like, something about the combination when he's doing his drum solo of all the other like organic sounding drums and the drum pads. I'm just like, that's really cool.
Yeah.
I wish more bands would do that.
Yeah, I remember the first time I ever saw Alex Van Halen's drum kit. Let's see, Alex Van Halen. I think it's 1981 drum kit. I think it's the stripy one. Yeah, yeah, it's the black and white stripes.
And did he
And
have all the little toms at that point too? Because why do I love the sounds of those so much when there's like a roll done down all of them? Like that, it just sounds really nice.
Okay, right. I'm gonna sell you on this Dream Theater album then.
Okay.
Because the literal opening to this album is on those.
Oh,
And then the
sweet.
album start.
It's one of those things like how some people say things are like oddly satisfying. Like the
Yes.
sounds of those little toms for some reason, somebody could just do a solo of just playing those, and I would be all like, this sounds really nice.
Hold
Do,
on.
do you have a little tom?
I have 4, but this is the closest.
Oh, yeah. You gotta incorporate those on your drum kit.
I look like I'm about to load a fucking shell into a tank.
Or you're at the bank and you're about
Yeah.
to make a deposit.
Oh, dude. I need to fix the stand that these go on because, obviously I mean, behind me, if you're watching this, I do have a rather large drum set.
Yep.
Uh,
It's
yeah,
it's it's it's
550
it's
quid, not bad.
it's large and he knows how to use it, ladies.
Yes, very much so. Hit my line. Um, but yeah, it's something as well I will also noticed while it's on my mind. The what is it? There's some wild, innovative shit going on with his early '80s kits, but he'd do this thing right where there's like these big tubes that attach his kick drums to another kick drum, and they extend out so it's like the length of three.
Yeah.
And I don't know what it does sonically, but I just think,
It looks
I
cool.
mean, yeah, it looks fucking rad. um, but yeah, where was I? Dream
Mike
Theater,
Mike
Awake.
Portnoy. We're talking about his
Yes,
drums.
I mean they're all insanely killer players, like the lot of
Yeah.
them.
That was the
Um,
one thing I remember back in the day in the early 2000s. I knew a guy that was really into Dream Theater, and whenever he would play it, the one thing that I always latched onto was the drums. I was always like, drums are really fucking good.
yeah, I tell you what, it's not on this album, but you want an absolute fucking wild ride? Check out the Dance of Eternity, which is a song. It's an instrumental. It's off of Metropolis Part Two, the album, and there are 104 time signature changes in this instrumental song, and
Wow.
it moves through a shitload of like different styles, and I know that it's got parts in it that you'll really appreciate because you'll
Probably.
think, and I shit you not, I don't want to spoil anything for you, but I want you to do a reaction to that song on my recommendation at
Okay.
some point. Just like, even if we do it as like a bonus thing, because there's parts of that where you'll be like, oh,
Okay.
yeah, where did that
Yeah.
come from? But yeah, so 6 o'clock, the opening track is really cool. There's some wild, funky stuff going on. Caught in a Web is quite heavy and cerebral. Innocence Faded is really cool and melodic. Still quite rooted a little bit in the 80s, occasionally guitar work wise.
Mhm.
Erotomania is a really cool instrumental as part of like a 3 song trilogy. Erotomania, Voices, and The Silent Man, they all have kind of motifs that run through it. And
Mhm.
here's the thing, right? Nothing brings out my inner music nerd than this band, because there are things I've heard so many times and I'm like, oh, that's that bit, and that's a reference to that bit in that song.
Yeah.
Cheeky little, you know, hidden things. But the highlight on this album for me is the song The Mirror, which leads directly into the next song, which is Lie. And it is just this groovy, heavy, but also like atmospheric and sophisticated thing that goes from spooky and where's this going into one of the coolest riffs I know. And it's
Sweet.
just it Lifting Shadows Off a Dream, great power ballad sort of thing. Scarred is a funky bluesy sort of thing, and then Space Divest is this wild fucking I mean, I say that it's just like a stylistic departure a little bit. It's this big sprawling piano ballad sort of thing. There are, I really do think Awake stands up right there with Images and Words on how great it is. It still has I mean, I like all their keyboardists, but um Kevin Moore is the guy on this album, and he still had some of those. I mean, I suppose you could call them dated, but I call them really charming and atmospheric
Mhm.
keyboards on there, and
Yeah.
you'll know exactly why when you hear this album. But it's the fact that they had the atmosphere married with the groove that shows up a lot of times on this album, but they still have the prog rock influence and everything. I just really love this album and
Yeah.
as a whole package. The amount of times I've listened to it,
Cool.
learned parts off it.
I mean, that's
I
it's another
I'm
it's another band that enough people love them that I'm just like I'm the one that has the problem.
Yeah,
you know?
but it's one of those things where I desperately want you to hear just some of the parts on this because I'm like,
Yeah. Okay.
it could
Well,
could be planting a seed here.
we will get to them eventually for sure.
Hell yeah.
Cool. So my number three, kind of going in a different area, with another album that is highly influential for me as a musician and a songwriter, and one of the most underrated bands to me forever. My number three is Magnified by Failure,
Hey.
and it is. I would say that's my favorite Failure album. That's when I discovered them. Was with this album, and it really opened my mind and led me down a path of music that I the stuff that it eventually led me to bands like Fugazi and stuff like that, where these guys
Mm.
don't sound anything like Fugazi, but they have part of it sounds a little bit like space. Some types sometimes
Oh,
people use the term space rock
he needs new
because it's
batteries.
yeah, there's like spacey type stuff on it, but there's also like they use these sort of discordant notes with each other, kind of similar to like Sepultura would do it sometimes. But
Yeah.
Failure was the first time that I heard a band incorporating these odd melodies and stuff that just sounded like beautiful, well crafted music. Like it didn't sound like noise. They would play these little parts and I'd go, you put a ton of distortion on that and play that over like a chugging riff, that just sounds like a noisy lead part. But the way they would handle it, it's just such amazing songwriting. And it really was the beginning of me hearing songs presented in a different kind of odd way with because there like song number one. Now this is going to sound stupid because I don't know how to describe this in the technical term. The song Let It Drip, the whole song has the same 4/4 beat, but the verses start on the one and then the choruses start on the two, so it shifts to where it's an upbeat and then it shifts to a downbeat without the drummer ever changing what he's playing. It's just the
Yeah.
guitars and the vocals change where they're placed in the song. First time I heard that, I went, holy fuck, man. I never thought about doing that before ever. And it just switches, immediately. And then you've got like the song Moth, like it goes in different keys from the verse to the chorus. And like, it really made me start to hear things in songs and go, wow, you can like really fuck with the way songs are written and perceived and everything. And I just like, and I know you could give all these examples of bands that did that before Failure and bands that maybe did it better. I don't know. But for me, that was like a real mind opener. And I love them. They still put out albums that I'm just like, nobody can do the shit that they do. And I love it. So Magnified is my number three album.
Nice. So my number two is Jar of Flies by Alice in Chains.
Interesting. I my excuse for leaving this off was that it was an EP. That's the only reason. It would have been in the top. It would have been in the top 10 if I hadn't made that excuse. So I'm glad it's here.
Yeah, for me, this album, this is one of those special place in your heart albums for
Yep.
me.
Mm-hmm.
And like, if ever I've been, staying anywhere that isn't, home or excuse me, um, or if like I'm stressed out or if there's any kind of conflict or anything in
Mm-hmm.
my immediate life, this album was there for me, and it's kind of like, hey man, you look pretty stressed. Why don't you just take a half hour, stop whatever you're doing, stick this on, whether or not I'm trying to go to sleep, or because it's a good album to just wind down and chill
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
It's not got any heavy bits. It's all, which is funny because Alice in Chains are one of the heaviest grunge bands, but they turned around and I mean, of course, they've done SAP
Yeah.
2 years prior, but this one to me is particularly beautiful because they just lean really into, you know, albeit dark but beautiful songs.
Well,
You know, especially
it's kind of like Jar of Flies is the Master of Puppets to the Ride the Lightning that is Sap. Like they knew they did
yeah,
it. They had done it before, but they did it better and on kind of a bigger scale, even though it's still an EP. But
same
I,
color
I
schemes too.
yeah, I love
That's
Jar of
kind of cool.
Flies. It's fucking great.
Yeah, yeah, and like all the way from Rotten Apple. Like, damn, dude, I the vibe on this album is, dare I say, exquisite. It
Yeah,
is. It's one of those things that it's like they really just captured a mood and put it in a jar.
yeah.
Um,
Well, not
you
only
know,
that,
it.
that album like lives in a memory for me because like I got it also on cassette and I just I have a vivid memory of walking into my high school and walking down the halls with my headphones on and listening to Jar of Flies and just I don't know why. Like there's certain albums that I immediately am put to an exact place and I'm
Yep.
like so when I hear this album it just I'm walking into my high school and with my Walkman on and it's very few albums there are a lot of albums that are give me nostalgic feelings but only a handful that like I feel like a specific place.
For me, I'd say it's probably the Christmas and following winter of about 2013 into 2014 when I got this album. I've got the CD of Jar of Flies and Sap,
Yeah,
double set. But I just remember laying in bed, really, really cold winter, but just laying in bed with the headphones in, start to finish, and then going to sleep. And it's just like a really nice memory of just being like, you know what? I'm just here taking
yeah,
this in.
yeah,
It's there were no external things. It was dark nearly all the time because it was winter. So it's like, hey, I'm just gonna lay here, take this in, and then go to sleep. But
yeah,
it's a really nice album to do that. All the way from. I mean, the only electric guitar parts on here are done in a pretty way. Whale and Wasp has some like soaring kind of leads on it, but it's
yeah.
it's only bendy textural melodies and things like that. Um, pardon me. I've got to the point where I'm a little hoarse, but uh,
Glad you did it and
uh,
not me.
but like, it's also an album that's it's taken on a new level of poignance since
Sure.
Lane Staley's passing with
Yeah.
a song like Nutshell. Nutshell is one of the saddest songs ever written, but I can't help but whenever I listen to it, I'm like, I don't necessarily feel sad so much as it makes you feel less alone, if you're going
It
through some shit.
there are some sad songs or sad sounding songs that have that odd comforting quality to them
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's one of them.
Nut,
Yeah.
Nutshell's probably my number one sad song.
Yeah.
Probably either that or Black by Pearl Jam. But I stay away. Fucking hell, we're only on track three. I mean, that's how good this EP is, man. Like, holy shit. Oh, before we move on to I Stay Away, I'm gonna say this about Rotten Apple. Rotten Apple does not feel like 7 minutes.
No, not at all.
It's one of those songs that like time escapes your perception of it. It's
Yeah.
just so good. You get lost in it. I Stay Away. really cool video to this one. Oh, it always sticks in my mind, like the really weird claymation stuff going on.
Yeah.
Like reminds me of a Primus video. But you know, it's got some really cool classic rock vibes going on with like the big strings and the twinkly 12-string sounding guitars and
Yeah.
stuff. No Excuses is one of my favorite drum beats to play ever.
Speaking of having a lot of little drums and little
Yeah.
cymbals and stuff.
Yeah. I can't express how fucking fun it is to play that song.
Yeah.
Um, Funny, this is actually the first song I ever heard off of Jar of Flies, because it was on Guitar Hero Metallica
Yeah.
as a guest song. That's a game even you had. Like we
I did. I
actually
did.
we both we have some crossover, but
Well, I very, I mean, when it comes to modern games, very little, but yeah, that was one that just because I wanted to play it, but
yeah.
I told you, I had to get the Wii version of it, which I've heard is
Hmm.
far inferior to other ones.
I will say I was a PS3 guy myself
Yeah.
at the time. That being said, though, I mean the hours I put into that. One time, I'm sure I played the Guitar Hero drum kit for like 12 hours straight, and a solid 2 hours of that was probably No Excuses. Whale and Wasp is just this gorgeous instrumental piece. Really love the guitar minis on it. Um, Don't Follow is a
did
really
you mean to say guitar minis? Because I really like that.
yeah, no, it's a term. It's a
Is it?
term.
I love it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Guitar minis. You got Don't Follow, which is this really nice, you know, almost folky kind of um song. And then finally you get Swing on This, which is a little tongue in cheek, you know, but it still has that nice, cool, um, we're a rock band playing an acoustic thing and doing it really well vibe.
Yeah.
So with that, you know, and that song in itself is also kind of a palate cleanser because for most of the album it's a pretty somber tone, and then when you get this one, it's like, okay, well, best be hitting the old dusty trail, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but you know, that being said, as much as I adore this album, there is one album that probably solely based on the fact that it's a full album and not an EP is at the top of this list.
Okay. Interesting.
So I have one left. So over to
So
you for number two.
my top two are very personal albums. So much so that I guarantee you that most of the time, anybody that lists their top albums from 1994, these are nowhere on them, let alone not at the top two spots. My number two is The Complicated Futility of Ignorance by Fudge Tunnel.
Cool.
One of my favorite bands ever. Very important band, just like a lot of these where, you know, the music that influenced me, because very shortly after this year, I would get my first guitar. I'd start learning how to play guitar and songwriting. And a lot of these albums kind of pushed me in the direction of the things that I love to do. And I've spent so much of my musical career, even when I was in bands where it was inappropriate, incorporating things that unknowingly to everybody else were connected to bands like Fudge Tunnel and Failure and Helmet and stuff like that. But it's the third Fudge Tunnel album, and it's their heaviest album, their most metallic album. It's just fucking heavy. Alex Newport shows up on my top 10 list 2 times for those of you who are keeping track. But I just love it. I love how heavy it is. I love how their stuff was so just like heavy and noisy and almost primal at times. And they were the band that when I discovered them, nobody else I knew was really into them. And
Yeah.
I fell in love with them because they sounded like how I kind of felt, because they were music that could so easily be just put along with metal, but clearly they were not comfortable just being metal, and they were kind of fighting it at the same time. And I always felt that way. I felt like a guy that when somebody would look at me and say like, well, you're a metalhead, I would always be like, yeah, but and so I always felt like the odd guy in the metal scene, and I always feel like Fudge Tunnel was kind of an odd band in the metal scene because they had so many qualities that equated them with it, but also other qualities that made them stick out to where people would be like, well, that's too noisy, or that's where are the solos? If there was a solo in a Fudge Tunnel song, it was just complete noise. And so it's almost like they always came across to me as like you took a metal band and Nirvana and kind of put them together. Yeah. And I was just like, well, that was me, because I was obsessed with Nirvana and Metallica and Cannibal Corpse and all these other things. And so Fudge Tunnel to me, it was always a band that just felt like it was tailor-made for who I was at that particular time. And to be completely honest, who I still am today. So yeah, Complicated Futility of Ignorance is my number 2. I'm very excited to hear what your number 1 is.
Cool. So the most enduring and special album to me that I think of when I think of 1994, to me it's got to be my personal favorite Megadeth album, Euthanasia.
All right, nice. Okay.
Yep, I fucking
another one from my 35 that didn't make it.
Yeah, I fucking adore this album so much. Like, this is my go-to Megadeth album. And I remember saying that on a thing quite recently. And the amount of, like, laugh reacts I got from incel Megadeth fans who were like, if it's not... if it isn't thrash, it isn't good. But it's like... I don't know what to tell you, my guy. I got laid this morning and you didn't.
I had somebody get annoyed with me on I think it was our Megadeth ranking or something where I was talking about Megadeth and I was talking about how the Megadeth fans, because of the presence on the internet, come across as very immature people most of the time. And their comment was just like, it's you're such a judgmental prick or some shit. I don't remember what they said, but I'm just like, just go look at any comments on the internet. It's like there are like Megadeth, diehard Megadeth fans seem like their job is to be pricks about stuff. And I'm just like, well, I guess it fits in with Dave Mustaine. So, whatever.
See, you don't need to defend the man. He's won according to most metalheads,
Yeah, exactly.
Like he's, yeah. So, with that, I'm going to dive into the album before I pollute it with their filth.
to me, Euthanasia is the ending of their really strong run of albums, because after that, there's a little bit of dipping here and there for me. But Euthanasia is like, it's not my favorite of that era, but once again, it's that thing where they took a step away, towards something else. And yeah. I always appreciate that. And they did it really fucking well on this album.
And like another thing that further influenced my love for this album is the fact that they did a making of documentary around it. So
which I have on VHS.
Oh, very nice. Lucky you.
Actually, my wife bought that for me. She went on vacation with her best friend and they were at some, I don't know where they were, but she saw it on VHS. She's like, do you have this? I'm like, no, please get that for me.
Oh, that's awesome. I love little things like that. Yeah. I need that. Yeah, the YouTube rip doesn't do it for me anymore. I need the physical thing.
I've noticed that a lot. There are a lot of things that I really am happy to own, and it's all like, well, it's probably on YouTube, but I'm like, it's not good enough, man. I want to pop in the tape.
Yeah. I wish that I could, and I'm speaking as someone who does have a VHS player. Mm-hmm. Sometimes though, where I think to myself, I'm upstairs, I think to myself, just get out of bed, man. You don't need to open YouTube. You don't need to open YouTube. Just go get it. But yeah,
just get yourself one of those tiny like 10-inch TVs that had the VCR in the bottom of it from back in the day, and just put that next to your bed. Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah. It's in the attic somewhere, but I do have one.
Just pop it next to your bed, and then there you go. You don't even have to get out of bed.
Yeah, yeah. I've definitely thought about digging that bad boy out. Um, oh, but yeah, fuck, dude. Like to me, like I would go as far as to extend like the strong material to cryptic writings as well. I'm a big fan of that album too.
A lot of people would agree with you.
Um, and I would even, and this is really gonna piss off the oh, thrash or die crowd,
Yeah.
but like, I actually really like Risk. So if you,
As do I.
yes.
Risk is better than cryptic writings in my opinion.
Oh, spicy.
Well, we did
Well,
a ranking. We already had enough people already know my opinion on that.
yeah. So in case anybody is new around here and hasn't seen it, if you want some spicy Megadeth takes, go check out our two-parter on Megadeth.
I mean, I'm just being
Uh,
honest.
yeah, yeah, yeah. We're just telling you the truth.
Which is like that's the thing is that like whenever I talk about albums, like I'm I feel like they're and this isn't new. In the
Mm,
metal world, it's been this way since the 80s, where there's the music that you legitimately like, and then there's the music that you say you like in order for it to be part of your uniform. So like a lot of
mm,
people rank things in a certain way or say an album is their favorite album or a band is their favorite band because it makes them appear like a certain kind of person. I don't give two shits about that. I think Risk is a great album. I'm just, I like what I like, and there's no, I'm not a poser. That's a
yeah.
true poser right there.
Meanwhile, there's just a bunch of them waiting in the rings. He's wrong. He's wrong. He's wrong.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. If it chaps your hide that much when somebody likes an album that you think isn't good, if you feel the need
There
to
is a
say so,
right answer.
if you feel the need to say something about it, it's probably because your convictions about that album are actually pretty thin. But
Mm.
just saying,
Oof.
back
But
to
yeah,
euthanasia.
let's talk euthanasia. So starting off with Reckoning Day. I mean, pretty killer opener. Really heavy, really chuggy. I love that on
Yeah,
the toms.
yeah,
Love that. Train of Consequences. Really weird, jerky rhythm that still catches me off guard to this day. I love when a song starts with a feel that is gonna fake you out, and continues to do it like like I love it.
yeah,
Addicted to Chaos, really fun to play on drums, especially with a big kit like mine.
yeah.
Uh, A Tout Le Monde is one of the most brilliantly written songs ever. I love it. I love it. It's great.
I
Um,
think I said this on our ranking too, but I think this album vocally is Dave Mustaine's best album. I think he
yeah.
sounds really good on this one.
Yeah, like Dave Mustaine's voice is a divisive topic when it comes to Megadeth, but I think he
Yeah,
sounds really good during this era,
yeah,
especially. Uh, Elysian Fields, great song. Killing Road, amazing guitar solo in there. But probably my favorite song on the album. Blood of Heroes is really cool. Family Tree, deep, dark, fucking subject matter, but still a great song.
yeah,
Euthanasia, they're channeling a little bit of Black Sabbath going on. I Thought I Knew It All. Again, is another, it's, really melodic but well written song. Black Curtains, probably the heaviest, most chugging thing on here. Contains what I affectionately refer to as a stripper riff. Um,
yep,
something someone could pole dance to. And Victory is the closer. And here's the thing, right? I always thought that Victory is just Dave should have just wrote that song and been done with the whole feud because he just lists off a bunch of songs everybody loves cleverly in the lyrics. A
mm,
lot of the lyrics are lines, are part titles. Got there in the end of Megadeth songs, right? And he even says in the song, "I am a victory."
yeah.
Motherfucker could have ended the feud there. Could have never even tweeted a single thing. But it's Dave. And as much as I love him, he can't shut up. So, yeah, with that, I mean, it's my favorite 1994 album. It's my favorite Megadeth album. Uh, and so, yeah, of course, it was going to go high.
Yeah.
So, with that, over to you for your
Sweet.
number one album.
My number one, once again, is an album that nobody would put this at number one. Most people don't even know what this album is.
Green
But
Day, Dookie.
that came out in '94. But yes, it was that was not that was actually in my list of 35 because it's a damn good pop punk album.
I
But
thought it would be.
this was an album that I actually discovered. They played the video on MTV, I think maybe 2 times total. And the
Wow.
album was very poorly promoted, but not before I could get my hands on it and it be an album that I have loved for the rest of my life up until now. And I love it even more because it's an album by a band that just sort of disappeared and then nobody talked about. I'll just go ahead and I don't have a vinyl of this because it's not on vinyl. My number one is the album Stress by Stomp Box,
Really?
which is the shirt that I'm wearing. I'm wearing my Stomp Box shirt. This is a fucking underrated and fantastic album. And very, very recently, I got to interview the lead vocalist, Eric, on my channel. If you haven't watched it, check it out. But they're back together. But they did a couple like reunion shows to benefit somebody, and now they've just been very slowly working together again. It's a very slow process for those guys, and I don't even know if it'll ever even come to anything coming out. But they put out this one album that's like, it's the same thing with the Fudge Tunnel album. It feels like it fits in an area where it's almost on the edge of more of a post-hardcore kind of thing, but also has very metallic elements, has fucking riffs that give Helmet a run for their money. But there's something about it. It's, to me, one of the tightest played albums I've ever heard, where all the little stops and starts and shifts and shifts in tempo, everything is like on a fucking dime on this album. And on top of it, Eric's vocals are more on the metal side of things because the way he sounds, he almost sounds like almost like sometimes like a James Hetfield kind of thing with his vocals, because he's very gruff and sometimes it's shouted, sometimes he sings, and it's just such a fucking well-written album that I've heard probably hundreds of times, and every single time there's something about it where I go, I never really paid attention to that little section right there and how fucking cool that is. But it's like, so this is like when I'm saying it's a very personal number one. Because I guess when an album is something that at the time you're the only person that you know that likes it, and then over time you're one of the few people that ever fucking talks about it, it becomes even more of like an important thing in your life. And that's why it was such a big score when I got to talk to Eric from the band, because I'm just like, I never thought I'd ever even hear anything about that band again, let alone get to talk to somebody from that band. And it's just such an amazingly important album to me. And it's just another one of those albums that I understand why it wasn't huge, because its sound is very like, there's a certain kind of rock and metal fan that would be into it. But those that are, it's like right in this sweet spot of just fucking great 90s groove. I don't even know how else to describe it. It's amazing. It's a fucking amazing album. And it's the only one they ever did. Who knows if we'll ever get another one, but that's my number one is Stress by Stompbox.
Very nice. For those out in listener world, by the way, I wasn't being a dick about Stompbox. He's been wearing a Stompbox shirt this entire time. So,
well, to be fair, if I didn't have one and I had a shirt of one of my other albums, I would have worn that. But it just so happened that my number one I have a shirt of.
Power of deduction or whatever it is. process of
Yeah.
elimination. Yeah.
Yeah. But we did, I got to give some shout outs because we let the one big one that we both left out was Low by Testament. Neither one of us.
We did, and it's in my honorable mentions.
It's
It's
oh, you have some
right
honorable
at the
mentions.
top.
Go for it. Yeah.
So I've, my honorable mentions are as follows: Low, Nirvana Unplugged, The Bleeding, Vitalogy, Walk
Uh-huh.
On by Boston, and Betty.
Okay. Yeah, I had fuck. I'm trying to remember all the ones I had in there. State of the World Address by Biohazard was in there.
Oh man. Yeah.
Um, it was such a long list of albums.
Corn. Corn's
Yeah.
debut.
Oh, Corn's that. Why? Holy fuck! Neither one of us mentioned Corn. Yeah, that one. That one was in my 35. The first Corn album. Fucking Punk and Drublic by No Effects is in there. There's just like so many great albums that came out in 1994 that it was a huge undertaking, and I almost feel bad that we didn't do a top 20 because
Yeah.
there's so many albums to talk about. And for those of you watching on the YouTube channel, comment what albums we left out because I know there's a lot of really good ones. And yeah, fuck man, 90. Who would have thought 94? Such a fucking huge year. And
Very transitional year too,
yeah,
because it's like the end, the last kind of hurrahs of the grunge era, and the beginning of what would be the rest of the 90s, really.
yeah. Yeah, it's a great year. But yeah, if we and I love the fact that as I was doing this, I kept thinking about albums and I go, oh fuck that album. And then I'd be like, oh, that one was 95. Oh, that one was 93. And so the more that happened, the more I thought to myself, those are another 2 years that are going to be fucking difficult as hell to do.
Yeah. Dude, my 92 list was such a bitch. Like,
yeah,
if I could have, I'd have done a top 30.
In my memory, 92 was actually easier for me to do than 93. So, or 94. God fucking did 94. That's what we just did. Anyway, but that was great. We covered a lot of ground, and it is weird because you mentioned an album like Vitalogy by Pearl Jam, and like I think that was my number one when we did the Pearl Jam ranking, and I'm like, yeah, that fucking album's great. But that, once again, that was in my 35. And as I was like doing my little chart and trying to figure things out, albums just kept getting eliminated. And probably the one that hurt the most to eliminate was Low by Testament. That was the one where I'm like, this album's so fucking good, but okay.
Yeah. Man. That was fun.
So yeah, that was fun. So that was our ranking of 1994, our top 10 favorites. Feel free to put your top 10 favorites or email me, oldheadpodcast@gmail.com. What are your top 10 favorites? It just comes to me and I just get to read it. And then I'm very bad at replying, so I apologize. Sometimes I'm good at replying depending on the day. I get distracted easily. So yeah. So we still got a couple more episodes left of 2022.
Season 3.
and next week we're gonna be jumping back onto another band. And right? Are we? Yeah.
Yes,
we're doing another band. And then we have kind of a special one to wrap up the year.
Yes.
Although this year we will not be doing a Christmas episode, but I feel like we did a really good one last year. You can just go back and watch the Christmas one again this year.
And I'm also bringing the festive vibes with the, this is one of many Christmas jumpers I have. So yeah.
I have none, but once again, like I said,
it's a good thing I have plenty.
There's no sweater weather in here. It's either, you wear a jacket and you take it off when you go inside, or it's hot as fuck. Okay.
I try not to jacket outside.
That was on that note. That was great. All right. Thank you very much, Peanut Butter Platypus, to all of you out there. Once again, thanks to everyone that's been listening, because our Spotify numbers were great. And that, once again, I don't know how you get sponsors. I've tried to look into it and it seems very complicated, but if we're doing that well, especially on Spotify, I'll sell a fucking wallet or some shit on our podcast. But either way, Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time for another band ranking. And as usual, I'm going to throw it over to Mr. Eddie Sparxx to take us out.
I'm gonna go for a classic one on this one. Later, dude.